Tonight on the line, God dang it all, it's time to call Shannon and Paul with your host, Shannon Q, and featured guest, Paulogia. Welcome to The Line.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Line. I am here this evening with Paul from Paulogia, who I never get to host with. Just kidding. We host together all the time. Never get to talk to Paul. What are you up to this evening, Paul? What's going on? Tell everybody who you are and where they can find you.
My name is Paul from Paulogia. I am spending the evening social distancing and chatting with people on Zoom Hangout or Zoom-esque Hangouts as we're wont to do in this day and age. Hockey, although hockey playoffs and basketball playoffs have started, so it's obviously spring, right? Like I've lost track of time, but this must be about April.
Where am I? What's going on? What are we doing here? Yeah, relatable. Can totally relate. Yep. We are going to take calls tonight. Currently, we don't have any calls in the queue. I just came off the atheist experience, so I was thinking that we had to let go of a bunch of calls. I was kind of hoping that some of those people would carry over, but I guess they haven't found it here yet. So we are looking for theist callers. We really want to have a conversation with you guys. So please, the number should be being posted up in the chat. There's an opportunity for anybody to give us a call. Their call screeners are active and waiting to go. And until that, you're just going to have to listen to Paul and I. Paul and I are going to talk. So, Paul, why don't you tell us what's been going on recently at your channel? What's your most recent video about?
My most recent video was actually my very first video about Ravi Zacharias. He was an apologist who, as a Christian, I never really got into that much. But as I have left the faith and I've dug deeper into some of these things beyond my Mennonite central belief that I had. Ravi Zacharias is a very huge influencer who passed away last May, this May. And so I thought I would take a look at what some of his arguments were. And as I expected, they're very fluffy.
Amazing.
They call him an apologist.
You're great. You're a Christian now?
I'm not convinced now. He's a storyteller. He's clearly an effective storyteller, and he has this kind of grandfatherly, warm, charming vibe that I think sort of won over crowds. But I still have yet to see where he's really that much of an apologist. So, that's not that exciting. I mean, although, Ravi made some good points. Basically, someone asked him how do you know Christianity is true? And his answer was basically, well, Islam is false, therefore Christianity must be true. Was his essential answer. Like this was the dichotomy we were all wondering about anyway. So.
That's why everybody was sitting on the fence. Yeah. That makes total sense. I totally wouldn't have deconverted from Christianity if I hadn't realized that Islam was also not true. Now that I know that, I really have no choice but to reconvert back to Christianity. So, calls are starting to come in. I put Paul in charge of callers tonight. Paul's in charge. Let's see how fast this flies off the rails. First, what? Go.
First of all, I wanted to say there was the cool thing that happened. The cool thing that happened on your channel most recently. I think it was your most recent video was a discussion on morality with Scott Clifton and Matt Dillahunty. Is that your most recent video?
Yeah, that was. That's not my most recent video. The most recent one was me chatting with.
Oh, that's
Armin.
right. No, you had Armin on. That's right.
Yeah, but it was just before that. That was a wonderful
the morality
conversation.
discussion was great.
It was super valuable because there's so many different conceptualizations of morality that people have. And I guess I have I've been told I'm a constructivist, and I don't think that there's any such thing as, objective, absolute, tangible, immutable forms of external morality. I don't think that that's a thing. But we took a lot of time to kind of flesh it out between the three of us. And if you don't, Scott Clifton has a channel called Theoretical Bullshit, which is a great channel too, if you'd like to go check it out. But yeah, no, if you're perusing around my channel, that's probably my most recent video that I would recommend watching, because it was a wonderful conversation with he and Matt and I. I really enjoyed it. Morality and the soul are my two favorite things to discuss. So if anybody's looking to challenge me on those things, if there's a theist listening that has concepts of the soul or morality that they want to flesh out, please call to talk to me about that.
Absolute morality is real. That would be something. Yeah.
And I would love more theist callers to talk to you about the New Testament too. Because you guys may not know this about Paul, but Paul essentially memorized large swaths of the New Testament when he was what I want to call it Bible spelling bee, but Bible quizzer. When he went to all the Bible spelling bees.
It's not dissimilar to us. Yeah. All right. Well, we have more discussions to talk about, but since we have calls, we might as well jump to calls. And so we have Frank on the line. Hello, Frank.
Hi,
can you hear us?
Frank.
Hi, Frank.
Frank from Washington.
Hi, Paul.
Hello.
Yes, you and I have talked or thrown things back and forth quite a bit.
Okay.
Is this Frank that gives out the tickets?
Pardon me?
Frank that gives out the tickets?
Yeah. No, I just called basically to thank you for your work. I'm a Roman Catholic. I practice. I'm a practicing Catholic, but I don't get any good at it. But I enjoy listening to your stuff, and the thing is, it's interesting is that I mean, with some of the stuff that Paul does, I'm very interested. Is that I think, and I don't think I'm the only one who noticed this. Is that especially some of the people I watch quite closely, whom I don't like Kent Hovind, is that he doesn't really discuss anything. He's just run shtick.
Yeah, it's a script.
And he'll run
put up his PowerPoint presentation.
And I don't think I just don't think that's a good way of discussing anything. So anyway,
well, that's not.
That's all I wanted to do.
Well, okay. Well, so we should.
I think
so. We're amazing. Is that the point of that call?
Yeah, that's it. I enjoy watching. I think I surprised a lot of people when I in the chat when I mentioned I'm Catholic, that people are surprised I'm watching it, but I enjoy the conversations.
Well, that's great.
I'm looking forward to you eventually converting me to being a Catholic. That's your plan.
Well, I don't know. It's like I think I'm comfortable with my faith system, and that's fine. And but I just enjoy other points of view.
What do you think you enjoy the most about listening to the conversations? No, well, Frank, before we let you go, I'm just kind of curious. What is it that you enjoy about engaging in the conversations and the dialogues and listening to them? And what is it that you find
different? It's just different points of view and different information that I get. One of the things, like some of my favorite authors, like someone like Gary Wills or something like that, I always like him because I'm always learning new stuff. And I remember a number of years ago, I was in a bookstore in the D.C. area, and a woman was there, and she sort of saw that I was looking at the religious section, and she was Baha'i. And I've met people who were Baha'i before, and we had sort of an animated, 10-minute conversation. And she basically said that the Baha'is prophet basically said that people could learn a lot from different religious discussions or non-religious discussions. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I'm entirely.
We're all trying to learn. We're all trying to grow. We're all trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. What is it? Have you taken anything away in regards to your either perception of atheists and what they believe, or has it affected your faith system at all, or is it just something that's of intrigue to you?
No, I don't think so. The Catholic shtick is sort of an interesting thing. The best example I can give of that is from a guy named John Powers, who's a very, very good writer. But in one of his books, The Unoriginal Sinner and the Ice Cream God, he said that people come up to him and say, "You were a Catholic when you were a little boy, but what are you now?" And he said, "I don't see people going up to black people and saying, you were black when you were younger, but what are you these days?"
You can see the differentiation, though, because one is an intrinsic component of who you are, and the other is a belief system, though.
Well, that's you and I are going to have to agree to disagree on that one, because I think the Catholic thing is a little bit more ingrained than a lot of things. And one of the things, I mentioned this too, when
I'm curious
Paul and
about
I
that.
started texting back. When Paul and I started texting back and forth, I asked him one question I think is still valid, that if he were not from a fundamentalist background, would he may not have left? And the reason I say that is one time I went to my pastor in D.C. and I said, what would you do if I told you I couldn't be Catholic because I didn't think Noah's Ark was really happened? You know, my line from that would be that people would look at me like I had lost my mind.
But I think that I'm going to let Paul, I really need to interrupt you for a sec, Frank, because I think that Paul needs to address this, because this is a common misconception that people come at him with on a pretty consistent basis, which is essentially once he didn't believe in young earth creationism, then suddenly he was no longer a Christian, because he had, as William Lane Craig legitimately told Paul, that he had a brain dead Christian faith, because people are putting out that perception. That's actually not the case. I'll let Paul explain it, because I'm Shan-splaining Paul's life now, so I'll shut up. But I need to go ahead, Paul.
Well, I think the point of the
I think Craig was off base for saying that.
Yes, but that's the reason why. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah. Well, I took from Frank's statement there that there are more fundamental versions of Christianity than others, and that's partially why I find it very difficult in my channel to try and address Christianity in general, because so many of the Christians on any position will say, well, that's not my version of Christianity. And so, of course, and I'm assured on a daily, if not hourly basis, that if only I'd figured out someone else's flavor of Christianity, that would have stuck, and that would have been the one. Certainly, you know, I think the fact that I took the Bible so literally made it fall apart faster than it would have if I had not. For me, I grew up in a kind of a position where the Bible was 100% true or 0% true. There's no such thing as a 99% true Bible in the way I was raised and learned and believed. So once it fell to 99, then of course it fell to 0 quickly. But I mean, all that to say, yeah, we hear on a regular basis if you had a different flavor of Christianity, you'd have stuck around, and that's impossible to know. It would have fallen apart possibly slower if I had been in a different flavor,
or potentially faster. Or maybe not. You don't know.
Or potentially faster. Sure, exactly. Yeah, and there's, it's just not homogenous. Christianity is just not homogenous enough to address it almost as a monolith type thing. It's almost like an atheist. You don't know a lot about a person by finding out they're an atheist. You know their answer to one question, and then for everything else, you have to ask follow-up questions. And so, similarly, I can't make the same kind of assumptions about a Catholic or a Protestant or anything like that. So, and I think when you were saying that I think you were trying to imply that you were culturally Catholic as well as religiously Catholic. Is that kind of what you were trying to say?
Yeah, I would say that that's definitely true, because in my situation, it's like all I write about. My screenplays are filled with Catholic shtick, and in fact, my Jewish screenwriting teacher looked at one of my scripts and said, "You know, I always get a sense from you that isn't it great to be Catholic?" Which I thought was sort of funny, but and my stand-up comedy routine, I joke about. They throw a lot of Catholic jokes in there. And maybe I just say, I look at the world with Catholic eyes, and it's sort of hard to take my eyes out.
I'm curious if you would say that. So I consider myself a secular Mennonite in my own way. Like I still have some Mennonite heritage things that, in a way, I'm culturally Mennonite, because Mennonite very much is, there's a cultural component to it that is beyond just a Baptist or whatever. And I think probably the same is true. So I know this. I was friends with a lot of secular Jews who were considered themselves, they didn't believe in God, but they still practiced the Judaism practices. And do you think that there is such a thing as a secular Catholic? Is that a possibility?
I think there might be, but I'm not really sure what form that might take. Maybe that might be some Catholic who just goes to Mass on Easter and Christmas or something like that. And my own journey is a little bit different too, because I'm a recovering alcoholic, and it's easier to be in recovery if you have some sort of spiritual awakening. Some sort of spiritual.
I disagree with you now, Frank. Frank. So yeah, I think that is a very, very dangerous statement to make, because you're attaching the recovery process for addiction to spirituality and saying that like maybe it was easier for you, but there's many ways to recover from addiction that don't involve and maybe are more effective for people, especially for people who don't have belief systems. So, for example, if I had an addiction and needed to, which I do, I'm a smoker, for example. So, me recovering from that addiction wouldn't my relationship to God wouldn't or couldn't be a component of that if you were looking to make an effective recovery strategy for me. Now, if you're tethering recovery strategies to belief systems, then if your belief system changes, then what does that do to your recovery strategy? So if your recovery strategy is essentially saying, okay, there's a spiritual component, I can draw upon that and incorporate it into my recovery strategy. If later on down the line your belief system changes or is augmented in some fashion, then also your recovery strategy changes and augments in some fashion, which I would argue is a little bit more deleterious, because it's the two are intrinsically tied together as a component of the recovery strategy, instead of the recovery strategy being independent of your belief system, which I think would be arguably better, because you don't need to retain the belief system to retain the recovery strategy.
Well, it's just that in 1995, I happened to give a speech at the University of Pennsylvania about spirituality and addiction. And my basic premise was that the key to recovery from addiction was a spiritual awakening, whatever that was. And it was extremely vague.
I think that's dangerous. That's dangerous.
As far as what that, my joke about things like that is sort of like the only higher power I can have is the one I see in the mirror.
See, like when you say the key to recovery is some sort of like spiritual awakening, what if that spiritual awakening is something that never happens for somebody? What if it happens and then it's augmented later? Like you're tying belief systems into recovery strategies or any mental health strategy at all, I think is not advantageous in the long run, because you need to retain not just the recovery strategy, but the belief system, because they're so fully intertwined when you utilize them that way. Even if they could be, and arguably might be, or are effective, and seem to have been for you, and I'm grateful for that. I really am grateful for that. I think purporting them as being the answer unilaterally could be risky. Do you understand? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, what's the issue with what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Do you have an issue with what I'm saying? Because I'm interested in that.
Well, the thing is that one of the things I know in the history of the different recovery modalities is that early on, atheists in the group were very key to keeping the recovery open to everyone.
Okay.
That they were insistent about, no, this is not like some sort of a new Christian cult. It is, it's for everyone. And,
Sounds like
it doesn't matter, what your faith system is, this is possible for anyone. And I still believe that.
Okay.
And but the thing is that, well, let me give you one. In the speech I gave at the University of Pennsylvania, I ended with this line. I heard one guy say that he had sat at the feet of the Bhagwan for a while, this kooky Hindu or Indian guru who terrorized this small town in Oregon in the 1980s. He said that the Bhagwan said the fastest way to enlightenment was through alcoholism if you survived it.
Well, that's a dangerous thing to say.
Okay, so that's someone who, again, that's someone who's espousing is spiritual, who's giving very bad advice. I mean, I think, Frank, I don't know how you're defining spiritual exactly, but if spiritual is just a word to describe looking to something, beyond yourself, be it a legacy or be it, if you can fill in any blank with any noun other than yourself as spiritual, then it's almost without meaning. And I also think that that's a big mistake because, it is actually yourself. You deserve credit for your recovery. Everyone deserves credit for their own work and their own recoveries. To shift that off only to avoid blame when it doesn't work, doesn't feel. I don't know. I'm no recovery expert by any stretch. I know you've looked into this a lot more than I have, but it certainly feels like this spirituality is a placebo. I think this is, to reiterate the kind of thing Shannon was saying. When it's a placebo, when you discover that it's a placebo, then the problem can be that you slide all the way back and that you haven't really made any progress. Does that make sense?
It takes some of the locus of the responsibility away from you too. We do have to let you go though, Frank. I feel like you and me and Paul could probably talk for ages, but we've already been talking for almost 20 minutes, and there are other callers waiting on the line.
I know. This is sort of. I did not expect this. All I wanted to do was to say I enjoyed your stuff.
We weren't going to let that happen.
No, we have to come to some point of disagreement before we drop you. So
yeah, we need to turn all compliments into fights.
The thing is that. The thing is that, as I said earlier, is that, we're all trying to figure the world out. And, that's the important thing is that we're trying to figure it out rather than just sitting back and saying whatever.
Yeah, taking things for granted. We appreciate you calling, Frank.
I think that's it.
All right.
Okay, thanks you.
Frank. Talk soon.
Thank you for everything.
And have a good rest.
Actually, this is the first time Paul and I have talked. I've sent him a lot of emails over the years, so that's good.
Well, don't worry. The novelty of that wears off. Just kidding. Love you. Just kidding. Not really. Kind of. You're still in charge, guy. What now?
All right. Well, then I want to, there's a keyword here that I am intrigued by. So let's talk to Quill out of Texas. Okay. I think I'm trying to connect to Quill here. I see the.
Hi. It's a pleasure.
Hey, can you hear us? Welcome. What would you like to talk to us about today?
I am a Zen Buddhist, and I don't tend to partake in a ton of discussions regarding theism, but I do enjoy discussions about morality. And in those talks, Christians will often reference the God writing the law on your heart scripture. And
but then say it's prescriptive.
What I would like to know is whether or not you believe that the existence of sociopaths is enough to outright knock down that particular idea. And since sociopathy is a mental illness that one cannot really help but have, how can I make that point in a way that is inoffensive and respectful?
Oh, if you're engaged with, so that because you don't want to make sure that you're not utilizing sociopaths as a talking point and potentially being detrimental to them when you're engaging in the argument.
Exactly.
Oh, I respect the heck out of that, Quill. That's thank you for taking that into consideration. That's wonderful. Paul, you picked the call? Did you want to go first?
No, I picked the call because I went up your alley.
Because you know that I'm just like seething, waiting to talk about it.
Go for it.
So my thoughts on Christian perspectives on morality are, I don't even know if you would need to go so far as to reference sociopathy, but it is very, very good because I think, well, it's not very good, but it's a very good point because it does contradict the argument of writing the law in their hearts. So most Christians, in my estimation and in my experience, and, hashtag not all Christians, obviously, seem to perceive morality as some sort of prescriptive mandate. So there was these things are all existing external of us, and they are part of God's nature, and God's nature is inherently moral, and thus anything that God would do is moral by definition. Anything that he prescribes is moral as well. Now, that you encounter a significant amount of problems just using that as a premise, because is a moral action moral because God does it, or does God doing it make it moral? And those are really, really good questions. Now, to get to the written on the heart aspect that you were discussing, now that is what a lot of apologists will use or utilize in conversations when they're justifying the social intuitions regarding their presentation of prescriptive morality. Because if you are a Christian and you believe that it is there's absolute morality or there's objective morality, then you're grounding that morality in God, and it is prescriptive. So that should be irrespective of whether or not it is or is not written on our hearts. They appeal to that, I think, because they want to emotionally engage you and say, okay, well, if you and I both have similar intuitions, obviously that came from somewhere. And it's removing their actual position and taking it into an intuitive, subjective framework without them even realizing that they're doing it. So they're going away from what their actual position is in order to make you think that, well, intuitively, we all have similar ideas about what is or isn't moral. That has to come from somewhere. That somewhere that it comes from is God. But then they're changing their definition of morality, if that's the case. Because if morality is just intuitions that God gives us and not mandates that he's prescribed for us, then we're talking about very, very different things. So I could go on about this for ages, Quill. I'm so sorry, but I really could. It's one of my favorite subject matters because I think there's such a convoluted mess when it comes to these dialogues because people change their definitions so frequently in order to make their arguments. So let's just operate under the assumption that essentially they're going with their moral framework is not prescriptive mandate, but it's intuition based. And this is where they would have to make their argument, if this is in fact their argument. And this is where I think your point comes in. If their argument is that people have similar moral intuitions, that, killing is wrong, for example, or stealing is wrong, or adultery is wrong, they still have to appeal to the grounding. They have to demonstrate that God is the grounding for that somewhere. And in order to do that, it would have to be unilateral. It would have to be expansive. It would have to go over every conceivable person through every conceivable culture. There would have to be no differentiations. And that is where somebody who is a psychopath or a sociopath, not having those innate moral intuitions, would deviate from their perspective. But you don't even need to get that far, because all they're doing is asserting that God is the cause for those intuitions, and they're ignoring any other probable causes for those intuitions. And we could establish, even through just conversations with somebody who is a theist, that there's a multitude of other probable causes, like empathy, a desire to retain social cohesion, a desire to alleviate potential harm against oneself, a desire to retain your in-group status and protect an in-group, a desire to maximize well-being. Those are all things that we could have an evidential standard for that would negate their assertion, which is all it essentially is, that the reason we have those intuitions is God, which is ultimately their argument, and they're using it to get you to God as a prescriptive mandate, and that argument negates the original their position anyway, because intuitions shouldn't matter. That was a lot. I'm sorry, Paul. Do you disagree with me? Paul, do you disagree with me?
Well, I agree with all of it. If I may offer just some advice, because it sounded like you wanted to have conversation with theists, and if I may offer some advice as the theist that I was up until recently. For me, sociopathy would not have been a good example, because sociopathy, for me, would have been an example of a damaged person, and that was something from the fall. And so when God is describing humans in the good ways, those were how the original design was. And then when Adam and Eve, when the original sin happened, then all kinds of disease and problems occurred, and sociopathy would have been one of those symptoms, like cancer or a different sexual orientation, or any of those things are all under the umbrella of this wasn't how God designed it. So even though Romans 1:20, or that section, if that's what you're referring to, says, this is written on our hearts, the sin-cursed world that we're living in makes some of that impaired for some people. And so unfortunately, it's just really sad, a theist might say, but the person who has mental illness in one way or another, they're a victim. And so, but the fact that they're defective doesn't negate the fact that there might have been a perfect design. Now, I don't believe anything that I just said. Everything, I completely agree with everything Shannon said. I'm just trying to give you some of the things that you might come up against if you're having this discussion with a theist.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
So in your hypothetical there, you basically said that this condition wouldn't really convince you because of the fall and those related details. Would it help in that situation to point out that basically all of the things that are walled off for sociopaths almost perfectly mirror what are described in Scripture as the fruits of the Spirit?
So it wouldn't have been convincing for me, again, because, again, I also believe that demons and the devil were real, right? And so for someone like me, I would have been more apt to say, well, yeah, that's Satan's work in the fall, that it exactly mirrors the fruits of the Spirit, because Satan just does everything he can to pervert whatever's good. He perverts, everything. So I think you are better off, rather than pointing to sociopathy, more pointing out that each individual Christian disagree. Like, it's the healthy brains and the healthy hearts who actually have disagreements once you get past, as Shannon mentioned, the do not murder, do not steal, do not rape. Once you get past like some of those top 3 or 4, the healthy Christians don't agree anymore. Like, so where is this moral intuition when you get past those ones that are so obviously biological advantages? So I would like to encourage you to point to, as Shannon said, there are obvious biological reasons why some of these top 3 are there, right? Like, if you were a species that just murdered each other, we wouldn't exist anymore. Like, that's just not the way things are. So I would point out to the Christian, you guys don't agree on sexual morality, or even ethics in some gray areas. There isn't that intuition doesn't carry past biological imperative. And why is that? Like, I think that might be a stronger point with a theist. If you're talking to atheists like Shannon and myself, we love to talk about the objective morality in the way you brought it up. But that's just a bit of advice from me.
That's good.
That is really solid. That sounds like wonderful advice, since it completely negates the necessity for that second half of my question.
Perfect.
So thank you
nailed it
very much.
All right. Well, thank
I
you
put the
so
right
much,
person in
Quill.
charge tonight.
All right. Have a good night.
Thanks, Quill.
All right. So, I wanted to. Let's go to. I'm looking for the theists here. Let's go with
there.
Yeah, there are. I need to find them. So let's start with John in Michigan, and I'm connecting him. John, can you hear us?
Oh, yeah, I can.
Did we wake you, John?
Hi there.
No, I'm sorry to disturb your nap.
I'm sorry. I'm just. No. I'm just kind of. I mean, I guess starstruck would be kind of a weird thing to say, but I guess that makes.
Paul is an incredibly formidable human.
The easiest way to explain
it. Well, what did you want to talk to us about today?
Because I just I followed your guys' work for a few years now, and I'm a theist, but I like to, I like to watch pretty much everything on YouTube. So, and I started watching got recommended Paul's videos a few years ago, and I said, this guy's kind of got the same kind of like history that I do. I mean, I was more of a I grew up in a small town, and we were a fundamentalist bunch. Not much. You said that you were a Mennonite, or am I getting that one wrong?
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah. So, but I think that's kind of like a big impetuous part of wanting to be honest with yourself is saying, hey, because I like science too. I always was really big into science fiction and that. So I tried to keep both ideas in my head, like, learning the naturalistic, theories of reality versus, God said it. So I wanted.
That's great. Well, keep going.
Okay. No. I'm just saying there was a lot of times people will say that, hey, there was something traumatic that made you, lose your faith. And
oh God,
I hate that.
So do I.
I hate that.
And I'm
anyway.
I probably hate my dad.
You probably hate. You just want to sin, Shannon. Come on,
I just want to sin, and I hit a bad dad. Oh, something bad happened to me.
It's like, come on. Yeah.
Yes, no, absolutely nothing bad happened to me before I deconverted. Nothing. In fact, my life was going pretty great, and it would have kept going pretty great in my Christian community if I had not started thinking. So we agree. That's not a great line of argumentation.
Yeah. No. Yeah. So now, and the one question that I always feel I wanted to ask is, what kind of evidence would it convince you? What I already know what the counter to that one would be is, well, God would know. If God knows everything, God would know what would convince me. So, I don't. So,
are you running our show tonight, John?
Something?
Yeah.
No.
Keep going. You're doing great. You're answering your own questions.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
All right, John.
But is there something in general that would lean you back towards faith, or you think? Well, you think you're kind of.
I can give a
more on the. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I can give a better example of for me personally. If I've been thinking about this a little bit. What might I have, if I had found things that were different, might I have prevented myself from deconverting is for now for me a little bit more of an interesting question. So if I had, so I lost my faith in young earth creationism, which is fine because I know that most Christians on earth, accept evolution in some form and accept the old earth in some form. I understand that. And so lots of Christians have reconciled that. Yeah. And that wasn't the thing that made me lose my faith. That was the first step in me investigating. My second thing I investigated was the Bible. And so, and as our first caller Frank talked about, he doesn't actually believe that the Bible is inerrant because the Catholics tend not to. They don't believe in sola scriptura. So that would have been an interesting thing. But since I do, since it sounds like, to me, the only way we can know this Christian God, at least, is through the Bible. If I had gone through and found that there was good reason to believe that the Gospels, for example, were eyewitness accounts, or if I had found there was great evidence that Abraham existed and that Moses existed, and that that those stories, and that the Hebrews had been slaves in Egypt, and that there had been this mass exodus of 1 million people in a very small desert for 40 years, where they left not a shred of anything, right? Like, so some of those, for me, it's less about if I had found some further affirmation. Now, I might have been mistaken, because none of those things I listed actually speak to the truth value. Eyewitnesses can be wrong, and the history proving the existence of a person, or the existence of a town, or even the affirmation of a non-miraculous event, that doesn't actually improve the odds. The trouble was, even those basics didn't hold up. And so if those basics don't hold up, how can I then extrapolate that, these spiritual parts, which require even which would seem to require even further affirmation, those seem even less likely. And so for me, I guess, if I had investigated the Bible and found stronger evidence there, then my faith could have had a shot. Then I would have probably done what Frank and others encourage me to do all the time, is we'll just find a way to make it all fit. Well, I don't see any reason to make it fit any more than I see, a reason to try and why don't you just try and make Scientology fit? Well, whatever. Like, it's just not compelling. So there's a slightly different answer that I was able to give to somebody to that normal question. Was that in any way satisfying to you?
Yes, it makes a lot of sense, because the foundation. If I can paraphrase you, so the foundational aspects of what everybody's asserting to you is the truth, the supernatural elements. There's not even any good evidence that's there. When on top of that, you don't even have any good evidence that the mundane things that would prove, maybe there was hypothetically speaking, maybe there was a guy named Moses or a guy named Abraham, but maybe they were just the chieftain of the Israel, one of the tribe back then, or something like that. So you don't even have that.
And I'll be fair.
I'm not even sure that's true. So what about the rest, right?
Yeah, that's some good active listening. That's largely what I was going for. So is that answer what you were? Does that itch the scratch that you were had in your brain?
Yeah, I just wanted to. I just really, we had this. Just saw that we had a similar story, so I just wanted to see, if I had another route I could have taken. So.
And where are you sitting right now? You're sitting on the theist side of the fence.
Yeah, I'd say theistic evolutionist with more of a deistic kind of side of it. I believe.
Okay.
Oh shit, it's difficult to explain it, because I'm not entirely sure. That's
why don't you?
One of the biggest questions out there. I don't know.
That's an important question, though, for sure, John. Like, what you believe and why you believe it. Like, if you find it difficult to articulate, you should maybe we'll let you go, because we do have some other callers on. But I'd encourage you to call back. I'm sure Paul and I will co-host again if you can tolerate sitting with me for another hour. And maybe you can call back in some other time after you've thought it through, and let us know how you would articulate what your belief system is. So we're going to give you homework, John. We're going to say, go and really do some introspective analysis regarding what your belief system is, what it's predicated upon, and how you would articulate it. Okay. Homework.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. I've been fidgeting with an enterprise for like 20 minutes.
You have been.
I need to stop that.
I need to let you talk more, obviously, so that you can.
No, absolutely not. Please don't. You're doing.
Anyway, we're going to jump now to Sven in Seattle, who is also a theist. Can you hear us, Sven?
Score. What's up, Sven?
Hello, I can. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
No.
Hey, how you doing? Welcome to the line.
What?
No,
Oh,
Paul is a jerk. Ignore him. Just ignore him.
Hi, Sven. Welcome to the line.
So
what did you want to talk to us about?
Thank you. Yeah, so I did call last time that you co-hosted, and it was right at the end when Shannon dropped, so I'm glad you're here this time, Shannon.
Yeah, although we'll see what happens. Maybe you're bad luck, Sven. But I got booted off my own show.
Oh, no.
But you'll get a much better answer with Shannon here, that's for sure.
Oh, is Sven the one who called to talk about the soul?
So, yeah, so I just, as a person who is pretty high on the empathic level, I do spend every day thinking about, how people are trying to do good and moral relativism and all that. And I just would wonder from a psychology perspective, what really would be your advice to someone who wouldn't see the purpose of living life and going through this anxiety and stress if there's no soul or better purpose that we're fighting for? And that's like literally our daily struggle.
So I just want to make sure that I'm deconstructing the question correctly. So I'm going to repeat it back to you in my words. Let me know if I've got it. So what would be my advice for somebody who is very empathic, invested in caring about the things that happen to others? And if there is no soul or, air quotes, ultimate meaning and purpose, what would my advice be to somebody who has that sort of inclination regarding how to feel about those being facts or the case? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, you could say that.
Okay. So I suppose my advice would be that if you are empathic, and I don't mean empathic, like, you can really sense other people's emotions in the not Deanna Troy empath. Yes, exactly. It's my enterprise. Wrong enterprise for her, but anyway.
Yeah, in the scientific way. No reading minds.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. In the actual way of, being high on the scale of being empathetic. Then I think that it ultimately is indistinguishable if there is or isn't a soul, because I don't think that there is one. And I'm pretty heavily empathic myself. I'm a very empathetic person and invested in and care a great deal about the impact that the things that I do have on other people. Now, even if I do not have a soul and there is no, air quotes, ultimate meaning and purpose, there is inarguably still other people. And if my locus of concern is the effect that my actions have on them and the benefit that I garner from interacting with them, that is static. It does not change whether I do or do not have a soul. The impact that I have does not change. The impact that they have on me does not change. The only difference is what my perception of whether or not it is or isn't important, that there be some sort of existential, continuously existing external component of me. And I don't see that as being necessary for me to feel emotions and be affected by my actions or have my actions affect the emotions and mental outcomes of others.
Right, I see that. And I guess more of my point is where, like, as an empath, I want to understand people and their feelings, and I like to feel their emotions. And if there's no objective morality, and to me that would lend toward, who am I really to not feel agree?
What are you motivated by?
Someone like Hitler who just wanted to.
What are you motivated by, Sven?
The objective morality good.
So if there is no objective morality, do your motivations change? So if you find out right now, if you have an epiphany on this conversation with me, that there is no external attainable standard that we call morality, that has an absolute component to it that we can achieve. If you find that out right now and have this epiphany while we're on the call, What changes for you about how you conduct yourself and perceive your relationships with other people as a result?
Well, personally, this is why I'm very strong in my foundation. That wouldn't change, because for me, I wouldn't see any purpose to, like I said, living this life or going through the anxiety or the stress of trying to help people. And it seems like if there's no objective morality, it seems like there's no good fight to be really had. And I think you see this more and more with the intellectual right, Jordan Peterson and other people I've heard on Joe Rogan who, like, they don't defend Hitler, but they say, like, from a naturalist evolutionary standpoint, he was just doing what was good for his people.
I think that's an oversimplification.
Subconsciously. What's that?
I think that's an oversimplification and a dangerous one. So if what you're saying is, if there is no objective morality, then there's no point in me behaving in any sort of what I would perceive as, personally, my internal existing moral standard. Because you obviously have some sort of internal existing moral standard, irrespective of whether or not there is an external objective absolute morality or it's a subjective standard based on actions, interactions, and effect. Now, if you're saying that if there is no objective morality that we can appeal to, then people will just descend into chaos, and thus we need to continue to retain that belief, I would disagree with you. And one of the reasons that I would disagree with you is that if you're motivated by the purpose of retaining well-being and preventing harm, and you've already articulated that you're empathic. If you're empathic, and that's a natural and an innate component of you, that empathy shouldn't be, and couldn't be, if you're being honest about it, relative to any sort of external existent absolute morality. It's a component of you. So I don't think that external morality that is absolute exists in any sort of tangible way, but I do understand the concept of consequences and am emotionally invested in the outcomes of other people. So instead of me attempting to achieve an unattainable standard, I can now have valuable conversations about why I have the standards I have, potentially compel other people to have the standards that I have, using rational thought, as opposed to appealing to something unattainable, which I think is less valuable, and not even unattainable, also unknowable. You really can't know. If there is an objective, absolute moral standard, it's indistinguishable from subjective moral standards, because we have absolutely, utterly, and completely no way of knowing when we have achieved it, if we have achieved it, what it even is. We don't have access to it. It's a concept.
So Sven, are you a Christian?
Yes. Oh, go ahead.
So would you agree that,
I was raised Christian. I'm now a dodecatheist. I follow the Greek pantheon.
Okay.
Oh.
Would you agree largely that the objective morality, should it exist, would at least contain contain as a major tenet, love your neighbor as yourself, or do unto others as they would have done to them? Would you agree that that is a large component of what you consider objective morality to be?
Oh, yes. The golden rule is found in most religions around the world somewhere. Right.
So that's why your question seems so confusing to me, because your question seemed to be, how can an empath or someone who's empathetic, deal with life if there isn't this objective morality? But it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, the more empathy a person has, the less they actually need that rule as a rule that they're thinking about, right? Because the more empathetic you are, the closer your behavior is going to align to that ideal. Would that not be correct?
Right, until the point where, like what I was trying to say earlier, where it gets dangerous, to the point where if I'm truly led to believe that there's no, that humanitarianism or well-being isn't the objective morality of the consciousness, then I would also have to feel empathy for Hitler and his fear of his race being killed, so the only way for him to defend his race was to wipe out all the other races.
So you think empathy is haphazard? So you think that empathy is haphazard and would be universally applied with without any discrimination to any person throughout time indiscriminately, and people who have empathetic components to them or are heavily empathetic wouldn't be able to do the logical and rational discernment of assessing whether or not that empathy was accurately placed. Because I suppose I could make an argument utilizing your perspective that you should sort of universally apply, and likely would universally apply, empathy as a standard in the way of empathy as equating attempting to understand somebody's perspective. But that doesn't mean that you have to sympathize with or endorse their perspective. There's benefits to being empathetic from a utilitarian perspective, because you're attempting to achieve an understanding of why somebody has that perspective. Achieving an understanding of why somebody has that perspective does have utilitarian value, because if you recognize other people having those perspectives, then you can utilize the information that was gathered from your empathetic endeavor in order to potentially intervene and prevent other people from making more dangerous decisions using rational thought. So saying I would have to have empathy for Hitler, I can understand why that would sound outwardly very, very dangerous, because this is somebody that is deserving of ultimate disdain, and is an example that people bring up because you have a visceral reaction, because you know how many atrocities this man committed, and that he's not deserving of our respect, and he's not deserving of our sympathy. But that doesn't mean that he shouldn't be subject to our attempts at understanding, which is what empathy is. And our attempts at understanding may be very well what prevents people like him in the future from engaging in the same types of behavior, or also increases our ability to recognize those behaviors so that we can quell them.
Right, like being empathetic to a serial killer would mean that we feel for the environmental factors that led up to their decisions or even non-decisions about, the actions they took. That wouldn't mean endorse. That doesn't mean you endorse what they do, because obviously you're feeling empathetic for their victims as well. So by your principle, you're feeling equal empathy for all of them. I think what you want to do. Go ahead.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I do think that would be more sympathetic, where we feel for them and we feel sad for their pain that led them there. But empathetic would be like where we literally feel how they're feeling and why the fear that they feel this is the only way they can survive, and to have an understanding of why they have to do that to survive.
Sure, but
now you're falling back on rational justifications.
Yeah.
It's just that part threw me off, sympathetic. But I do know you guys are busy, and hopefully I can call in the future. I really appreciate you guys. I'm going to go back and listen to this. It has been fruitful.
Yeah, I appreciate you calling, and I'm sorry that apparently the last time you called, I decided I wasn't going to be on the show anymore. Rage quit my own show sometimes.
Yeah, it's okay.
Thanks, Sven. It was really nice talking to you.
Have a wonderful.
Yep.
Yeah, you too.
Shoot, sorry. Dropped him a little bit too
soon.
Did you hang
up on Sven? I put you in charge, and look what happens.
I know, I'm the worst. But anyway, we're going to go to someone who's been waiting a long time. We're going to go to Daniel in Texas, hopefully.
Hi, Daniel.
Oh,
welcome to the line. You're in, bud. You're in. You're here.
Howdy.
What's up? Hey.
Howdy, heathens. God, it's a miracle. I'm on.
You did it. Yep. We all have to believe in God now.
Nothing short of a miracle could never have happened otherwise.
You need higher standards for miracles.
So,
all right.
So, a couple of things first. Y'all guys are the bee's knees. And what's the policy on cussing on the show?
Fucking don't care. Do whatever you're gonna do. Oh wait, that's my channel. I don't
already
talked fucking bee's knees.
I think rape and Hitler have come up already, so
dude.
whatever you're gonna do.
Right, Paul, you're the fucking shit, dude. I love you. Shannon,
awesome.
You're all right.
That's fair.
Okay.
That's fair.
You're suspect, my friend. You're suspect.
That.
Okay, so you'll have to forgive me. This is the second thing. If my story is a little discombobulated, of course, I keep up with his content amongst other things, and I was just scrolling. I saw y'all were live, and y'all had literally just started, so I said, fuck it. This is the first time I'm ever going to call into anything. I figured this was more appropriate than getting yelled at by Matt and him getting frustrated by Eric because he doesn't agree with them. So I said, I'll call this show. So forgive me if I don't make if it seems a little winded when I'm trying to explain my story. Are y'all still there? Have I lost you?
Yeah, we're here. We're listening. We're waiting for your story.
Do your best, Daniel. We're here for you.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't know if you. I kind of rant. So
okay.
Jesus. When I was 6, my mom was visited by some Jehovah's Witnesses, and of course she ended up getting real big into that. And I have I'm the oldest of 3 children. I've got a younger brother and a younger sister, and they're still Jehovah's Witnesses as well as my mother. So I grew up on Jehovah's Witnesses, and I kind of want to touch on this. And Paul, empathy doesn't necessarily come very easily to me, but I do feel a level of empathy with your story, especially when it comes to the kind of fundamentalism, the literalism of the Bible. I do feel like there is a correlation between critical thinkers and people that apply that critical thinking to their religion when it's so literal, when it is so fundamental, like you said earlier, when it's 100% or 0%. I think when people finally do leave that religion, not only have they left that religion, but they've left that religion as an atheist. Because once you start to apply that critical thinking to that religion, it all just kind of falls apart from there. Anyway, I feel like, am I losing y'all yet?
No, we're listening, bud. We're listening. Keep going.
We're listening.
Yeah, you're good.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. It just feels awfully quiet. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, no, we're nodding.
No, we're listening.
We're nodding and we're listening. So
okay. Okay. Yeah, sure.
But fast forward to where we're at.
Right. So I'm 30 now. I have 4 kids. I'm married. My wife and I together, we had 2 kids. I had a son outside of it, and she had a daughter outside of it. They're the exact same age. So anyway, we're happily married. We have a house and good jobs and stuff.
Awesome.
But obviously I'm an atheist, and it does create some issues. And to be honest with you, despite her, being my wife, and she knows my history as one of Jehovah's Witnesses and the doubts that I've had, and because she's a very, very, very loose Christian, kind of, if I thought in the mindset of a Jehovah's Witness, I would say she, kind of the no true Scotsman. She's not a real Christian, obviously, she doesn't know any scriptures, but that's how a lot of people are, non-denominational. But I, to be honest, I can't be forthcoming with her regarding being an atheist, and I haven't been since we've dated and got married and everything. And now, we just had our second child, 4 kids altogether. There's this pressure now to, I feel like she's getting a lot more into, and maybe, it's kind of having a child is a beautiful experience, whether you believe in God or not. Fuck the people that say, like, oh, how could you have kids and not believe in God? I don't have to believe in God to love my fucking child. I don't have to believe in God to teach my child to be a good person. Anyway,
so do you have a specific question?
Now, and I don't know. Huh?
Sorry, I was just wondering if you had a specific question about the situation you're in.
Oh, I'm not sure exactly how to, what's a good way to kind of tell her that I'm never gonna be a Christian?
Well, there's several questions, and Shannon, did you want to jump, or should I take it for now?
I can. Yeah, sorry, absolutely. I got distracted because I was spinning my Enterprise and I dropped it. so sorry about that. Now, I think that all relationships should be based on a foundation of honesty if we expect them to continue. Now, if she knows your history but doesn't know that you are in fact an atheist, I think that it would be a good idea to have some conversations with her regarding where your belief system is and how that relates to your relationship. If you're afraid to bring it up, that would lead me to believe that you have some fears that there may be consequences if she finds out what your belief system is, or that you lack belief entirely. When you initially started dating her or were with her, have your beliefs evolved since then, or were you always an atheist and it's just now something that's coming to the forefront that you want to talk to her about?
I don't think they've necessarily evolved. I mean, I've learned more than as I've gotten into adulthood, delved into the content surrounding it. But I think I was an atheist before I knew I was an atheist. So,
but you're just feeling it, like you're able to articulate it confidently now.
Right. I would have told you I was a Gnostic when I was 17.
Oh, been there. Been there, done that. We've all gone through that story, Eric, I think. A lot of us, anyway.
Yeah.
Paul went straight.
And God delusion kind of changed my mind, but...
That's right. Paul had a hard line. I went through the
I was agnostic for a fraction of a second. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. So, I guess the thing that I would give you as advice, and it's difficult giving advice in these sorts of situations without knowing the full context of what your relationship dynamic is, but I would say that it sounds to me like you've been an atheist since the beginning, and that your investment in her faith and is not something that's a deal breaker in the relationship. Like your investment in believing the same things that she believes, I guess I would say. So if she already knows that you don't believe the same thing that she believes, the label that you put upon that, whether it be, whether you're a Muslim who doesn't believe in her church, or whether you're a Buddhist who doesn't believe in her church, or whether you're an atheist who doesn't believe in her church, should all be interchangeable in regard to her perspective on you, because her relationship is with you, not with your belief system, unless and until your belief system starts to infringe upon or try to dictate things that occur in the relationship, or hers does, then it shouldn't be a factor, because you're the same person you were. It's not like there's a new break. She married an atheist. She just doesn't know that she did.
Daniel, what does your wife think that you believe?
Yeah, that's a good question.
So, with Shannon, I was going to tell you, from what you were saying, yes, that is absolutely the case. I think it's always been the case, but with kids now, it adds a new spin. The way we want to raise our children. Mm-hmm. As far as what she thinks I believe, I think she knows that I don't take any of it literally. I mean, that's a big thing. She knows the fundamentalist kind of beliefs that I grew up in, and taking the Hebrew scriptures very literally, and she knows I don't buy that shit. So
a couple considerations. Go ahead. My marriage did break up. It was a final straw. There was many straws before that, but the final straw was this disconnect on belief. And so I basically my whole life is giving people cautionary tales. Don't do what I did. And I would say, it sounds like what you shouldn't do is make a big deal about this label, because it's clearly she's aware that you have. As Shannon was saying, she's aware that you have a disconnect in beliefs. So I don't think intellectual honesty requires that you wear an atheist shirt wherever you go. Like
Sure.
it feels like, I think if your primary consideration is your kids, you both kind of have this right. Sorry, if your primary consideration is your kids, and sorry for the delay here on this one, the call, you must be aware that like they're gonna be presented if they're exposed with your wife and her family and her friends who do believe these things. These kids are going to be exposed to these ideas. The question is, are they being presented that these are the Yeah. So I think what you need to, probably you need to figure out which hill you actually want to die on, if indeed there even is such a thing, and
right.
Ideally, you're not presenting these things as literally true. You'd prefer she doesn't. Go ahead.
Right. No, I've told her that, obviously I want our kids, because this was a big thing for me. Part of the turning point for me in terms of like not believing in God, I had stayed home from school on September 11th, 2001, and I watched the second plane hit. I remember asking my mom, like, what the hell just happened? And her telling me it's because of their faith. And that right there just was like, okay, fuck faith.
Right.
They believe they're just as right as we believe we're right, and so I've told her that, I want my kids to know all perspectives, and I don't, like, I never shoved like the terminology in her face or like atheist or whatever. But I just try to find a way to, because she seems to be getting overboard with the whole Christian thing and dedicating our children and making sure that they're raised Christian as if that's the only way to raise someone morally. And I'm struggling to find a way to tell her that you don't have to raise a child as a Christian for them to be a moral person.
Well, I think, so my advice to you is to be the example of that. To be the example of the moral person in their life who doesn't believe. Right. So that they will have that example of, they will see some theist people, some Christians who are good people, and they'll see atheists as good people, so that they will ideally eliminate that as the common thing. And I think as long as your strategies, you can't prevent your wife from teaching her kids what she wants to. So I think what you need to do is balance that. Be the balance who is offering critical thinking. When you see an ad on TV, and don't go after the religion, because that's just going to create strife in the home. But teach them things. Like if they see a political claim or an advertising claim or whatever claims, and create the conversations with your children around, how do we know if that's true? Or a scientific claim. Masks can be a thing. It doesn't matter. When you start to teach them, it's so cliche, but if you're working on how to think rather than what to think, she's probably going to be concentrating on what to think. So you be the parent who's concentrating on how to think. And then I think that's because if you're attacking Christianity constantly, this is just going to be a source of strife in this marriage, and it's going to affect the children. They're going to close down as religion as a topic that they can converse with you about. They're going to feel like they have to please mom or please dad, and that's not a situation you want to put your kids in. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, that's an amazing point. You're right, and it's funny that you mentioned like the math thing or just general critical thinking, because I do feel like, at least with our children, like her daughter and my son, my stepdaughter and my son, I do feel like I'm the one that's telling them, essentially they don't have to believe everything they read on Facebook. They need to learn to verify the sources. They need to think critically about it, So it does apply, obviously, outside of just religion. And I wouldn't say I'm hammering it down her throat or anything. I almost feel like I'm too secretive about my doubts. I almost feel like I'm being manipulative sometimes when I know I say what she wants to hear when it comes to having faith and raising our kids as Christians. I almost want to be more forthcoming and say exactly what I think, but there is, what's crazy is like, go ahead.
Shannon's muted, unfortunately.
I'm muted. I'm muted now. Sorry. Hi. Can I give like a little bit of advice? I think that ultimately whether they are or not going to be Christians is going to be up to them. It's a decision for them to make, right? So when you're having conversations with your wife, I would maybe draw attention to the fact that you guys in these conversations, or she, it sounds like, is attempting to make this determination for them, whereas you're attempting to teach them how to make determinations. And drawing her attention to that will maybe be a little bit less, it'll put a few less walls up for her, because you're not closing the door. You're not saying I absolutely want to prevent them from being Christians. You're saying that it's not up to us to decide.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right. It's a choice. And I really, truly don't give a shit. They're my
just
kids.
want them to be good people.
That's what, as it.
Right. We do have to let you go, though, because we've been talking for a long time. Yeah, and that's what good parenting is, wanting them to be happy eventually. We appreciate you calling, though.
Thank you so much.
This is my first time, so I was...
You did great.
And all I would say is, Shannon and I may host again, and if you get a couple months, if you have some kind of update, or let us know how things are going.
Yeah,
thanks
for sure,
Daniel.
Thanks, Daniel.
All right, so we're gonna jump to our last caller, and hopefully we can squeeze it in before our hard stop. And I'm gonna butcher this name. Otangalo, is that in Brazil? And I'm gonna apologize before we even start for not necessarily getting the name correct.
Yes, hello, Paul.
Hello.
Yes.
How do we say your name?
Otangelo. Can you hear me? Yes,
Otangelo.
Hello. Yes, Otangelo, that's okay.
What's
can
up?
You hear me?
Yeah.
We do. What can we help you with tonight?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We do.
Yes.
Okay, my question, the question which I would like to ask to you both is, I'm a Christian, and I would like to know, how can we explain our existence without a creator?
Oh, Paul, your turn. Go. Tag your it.
So, one of course wouldn't need to, if one is positing a creator, that is creating a burden of proof for that person. So as opposed to the person who's saying, we don't know. So, for example, I am not claiming that I know all the details about how our existence came to be. It seems to me that naturalistic explanations are in their infancy, but on their way, and it seems plausible to me that in the future that we will have a lot more questions answered. So I guess the question...
It's basically a material, so it's basically a materialism of the gaps that you are endorsing.
No, it's not at all, actually.
Well, I understand why you would say that based on where you cut me off there. The where I was going to head was
because
that,
you said we don't know, but yes, because you said we don't know, but we hope that we will come up with an explanation. So that is basically you are saying is we don't know if materialism is true, but we hope that one time we will find an answer. So that is a materialism of the gaps argument.
So
how do you know that God creating everything is true? How do you know that God creating everything is true? Or I'm getting cranky now. How do you know? How do you know? How do you know?
Well, there are two. Shannon, there are two propositions. That's a true dichotomy. Either there is a God or there is no God. Do you agree with that?
Uh-huh. Do I agree with the fact that the question, either there is a God or there is no God, is a valid question? Yeah, but that's not, you don't answer my question with a question. I asked you how you know. How do you know? How do you know that God created? How do you know? Because your criticism of Paul is that he said, well, we can't know, and you would have to give the same answer. And if you're going to be honest, you're going to have to say, I don't know now too. And then that's God of the gaps. So then you have to prove you're God. So off you go. How do you know? Don't answer it with a question. I'm hot and I'm tired and I feel like you're being dishonest and I'm not in a mood.
Shannon, I started first to define a framework upon which making an investigation. And that framework is a true dichotomy where we have on the one side the proposition that there is no God.
How do you know God created the universe?
And on the other side we have the proposition.
How do you know God created the universe? Why is there something instead of nothing? And that the answer to that question is God. There either is or isn't a God. Sure, I'll accept that. Well, I don't think there is. You think that there is. How do we know that he created the universe? Because if your criticism is that we have to say, I don't know, you're going to have to just really look in a mirror and recognize that you also have to say that. You're making an assertion. That's the difference. Paul's not making an assertion. He's saying, true, I don't know. You're saying, I know God created it. I don't know how. I have no way of proving it. Therefore, I'm better. I win. Mic drop. Also, there's a dichotomy, and it doesn't get that way.
First of all, Shannon, if you make a show, then your show has a purpose. And you don't demonstrate that your show has a purpose because you say, we don't have an explanation. I
can make a show with no purpose, and that's not the question I asked you. I'm going to ask you the question again. How do you know God created the universe? That's what you asked. Paul, answer the question yourself, or I am going to get cranky. Stop changing the subject.
Okay. First of all, nobody has absolute answers or knowledge in regards to
And you're origin. On the same grounding. You're on the same grounding. Your criticism isn't valid.
Sharon, all we can do is use abductive inference to the best in regards of origins. And that means that we can evaluate the evidence in the natural world or eventually direct revelation of a creator, and then we can see if there are better alternative explanations without the creator, and then see what makes most sense. And you were talking about a dichotomy. How we can posit that it makes sense that our existence can be explained without the creator. Now, we can, by all means, explain our existence with good arguments that there is a creator. The first thing is that the universe had a beginning, and then it had a cause, and that cause must be God.
How do you know the universe had a beginning?
Then the second we have...
Yeah, Angelo, so these are
good scientific explanations. The consensus...
No, so...
The consensus going back to this is that...
He's muted. Go ahead. And then I'm going to hang up on him because he's making me cranky because I don't think he's being honest in this engagement.
Right. You were talking about this.
Presuppositional. Bleh. Go ahead, Paul. Sorry. Right. I'm cranky, everybody. This is my usual self.
About a dichotomy. And, you take any classic example of dichotomies, like we took all of the coins in the world. There is either an even number of coins in the world or an odd number of coins in the world. That's it's a proper dichotomy. But do I personally have enough information to tell you if there are even number of coins in the world or an odd number of coins in the world? No. And we don't argue by inference on whether there's an even number of coins in the world or an odd number of coins. Just because you've created a dichotomy doesn't mean you currently have enough information to solve this dichotomy. And of course, any God you might posit that is all-powerful will answer any question. So, that's an unimpressive feat, and I'm not going to go into the other arguments that he half presented because I have many videos on my channels talking about all those things, and Shannon wants to carry on from there. But his yes, neither of us know, and if we had wanted to get into the assumptions being made, that's one thing or another. But neither of us know, and it seemed like I was the only person on the call comfortable. We were the only side on the call comfortable with we don't currently have enough information. If that's the answer, that's the answer.
Yeah, you're off mute. You can talk again on Tangelo.
Well, I disagree with you, Paul. I think we have amazing... Sharon, you asked me what evidence that I have to propose a creator, and I think there is smacking and amazing evidence in regards of providing points to a creator. And I started with you interrupted me, but I can give you a series of excellent arguments. The first that I mentioned is the beginning of the universe, the fine-tuning of the universe, the beginning of life. There is no scientific explanation how life began. Evolution is an explanation which doesn't satisfactorily explain the biodiversity on Earth. We have no satisfactory explanation of consciousness. The moral argument, we know that objective moral value exists, therefore a God
Untangelo, you're on mute. All right, he's on mute again, and I actually think I'm going to drop him because I don't think that he's actually willing to have a conversation. He just wants to proclaim things, and he's not actually answering questions. He's just responding with more assertions, and I owe everyone an apology for me being this cranky. I'm sorry. I'm just that is the last call was like my mental health straw, I think, for today. So I should probably apologize to Antangelo for not being as patient as I usually am. But I'm done, I guess. Does Shannon have a wall where that she hits? Yep, it turns out she does. Today's the day. Antangelo's the wall. So yeah, we're done. We did it. Yay! Woo. Did you have fun, Paul?
I did. I always have fun hanging out with you, Shannon.
Oh, good.
And we had a good diversity of calls. It was all right. Yeah.
We did. I enjoyed it. I very much enjoyed it. And we're zen. Everything is fine. We're all good. Thank you for tuning into The Line today, regardless of what channel you're watching. What are you doing? You should be subscribed to The Line. Paul and I are always going to be the co-hosts. There's a wide variety of co-hosts with a wide variety of perspectives, and we take calls every week at this time on Sundays. So please go subscribe to The Line so that you can see maybe someone else lose their mind that isn't me. I hung up on 2 people today. One's on the Atheist Experience and one's here.
Well, and for
I need a
reasons,
nap.
But that's all right.
I need a nap. Yeah, the other one called me a bad name.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for tuning in, everybody. Thank you, Paul, for being my guest. And thank you, everybody who's tuned in the live chat. Hopefully you were respected and we're good to each other. And as always, everybody, help elevate the discourse. Bye.